Hello and welcome back to Inside the Iggles Live. Thank you guys for joining us on this beautiful what month is this? August 21st. Thank you guys very much for coming with us on a Monday and joining us. If it's your first time here, we appreciate you. If it's your second or more or multiple, you get what I mean. Welcome back. Thank you guys very much for joining us. I am here with Jalil Williams and his separated but once conjoined twin Travis Williams and Brandon Pockrass. How are you guys doing tonight?
Spectacular. I'm doing good, man. Ready to jump in, talk some Eagles, talk some fantasy. What's going down today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing great. Can't complain. Regular season is that much closer. We're within, I think, almost a month, if not less than a month. And, it's now a great time to talk about fantasy football. And the good thing about cheering for a good team is that there are going to be good players to have in fantasy.
Travis, how you doing?
Good too. I'm doing wonderful, man. I had a good laugh today. I don't know if you guys saw the new Jalen Hurts Hulu commercial where they extended his last name and it was like Jalen Hulu has live sports, and he was like, "Yeah, that's always been my name. What are you talking about?"
That was good.
That was pretty clever.
Who have been the Hulu athletes? Like I know it was Baker for a minute there.
Saquon was doing it too.
Saquon was. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was good. I like that one. Before we get into the fantasy stuff, let's talk a few news stories. First, the first one that just I saw on Twitter before we got on. Adam Schefter tweeted, Colts have given all-pro running back Jonathan Taylor permission to seek a trade per league sources. Other teams now are weighing whether to make an offer to the Colts on and what would be fair value. I'm not good at reading, but that's what he said. And that's notable because the Colts are in Philly for the joint practice this week and for the final preseason game. Other notable thing about that is that Nick Sirianni was the offensive coordinator when Jonathan Taylor got drafted. And then somebody tweeted out a video of him celebrating. I don't know if you guys saw that. He had a weird headband on, which if you're a headband guy, the visor makes sense. I've always wondered where the visor came from with Nick Sirianni. But apparently he's always been a open hat kind of guy based on what we know from that video. How do you guys feel about the Jonathan Taylor thing?
I'm torn about it because he's obviously a spectacular player, and adding Jonathan Taylor to your roster is it should be a no-brainer in most instances if you can make the money work. I'm just already so excited about our running back room with DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, Gainwell, Wilson Scott, and I just want to see how it's going to play out. But I'm not a dummy. He's Jonathan Taylor, you know what I'm saying? So that's where I am on it, which is basically nowhere,
I think it comes down to a few things because, number one, another report came out that the asking price for Taylor is basically around a first-round pick, maybe a little bit more. So on top of already the contract demands that Taylor has been open about, or through rumors, quote unquote, open about, that you also have the Colts valuing him very high. Right. So in a vacuum, this would be a great move for the Eagles to get. You can never have too much offensive talent. If you're able to hit teams with a combination of Jonathan Taylor and DeAndre Swift while also having a guy like Rashad Penny and Kenny Gainwell spell the two of them, that'd be great. But at the end of the day, are the Eagles going to give up a premium asset for not just a running back, which is something they haven't done, but give up a premium asset that then has to be extended when you just let a guy in Miles Sanders walk? Personally, I don't think the Eagles are going to do something like that. I think they're going to be very content with the guys they have. They have plus 1,200 odds as of now to trade for Taylor. I think that a team that maybe isn't as smart with their assets and isn't as, I guess I would say, tuned in with the NFL landscape, in the fact that the Eagles rely heavily on throwing as many darts at the running back position as possible and getting production that way. I could see a team like, look at the AFC East. Miami Dolphins had A-Chain go down with a shoulder injury and we're in on Dalvin Cook. Maybe that's the team that is like, we need to win now. We're going to throw a premium asset at the Colts for Jonathan Taylor. Look at the Buffalo Bills. Don't exactly have a premium running back on that roster. Maybe they're a team to throw a premium asset at the Colts. There's these other teams out there that I feel like are more realistic shots to get a guy like Jonathan Taylor. And it's not me saying that the Eagles shouldn't get him or that he's not a good fit, but it's the fact that I'm not giving up a big asset for a guy that is basically going to be asking for a new contract once this season is over.
Yeah. Travis, you have anything on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that's got to be a hard no for the Eagles, man. I mean, right now, if he's complaining that he doesn't feel like he's getting the attention in Indianapolis that he deserves, if we bring him here, it's kind of just he doesn't want to be a part of a rotation. And there's always that fear, with running backs. They have a very short shelf life, and there's a pretty solid argument to be made. Maybe his best football is behind him. And just building off what Brandon said, I think it'd be very uncharacteristic for Howie and the Eagles to kind of bring him in if they're asking for a second or first round pick or a second and a player. It just really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I could see a team that's maybe got a lot young, not that Jalen's old, but a younger quarterback, kind of a rookie quarterback, that they're looking for a guy that could really just take 20, 30 carries a game if he's healthy. And as long as he's outside the NFC East, I really don't have a problem with where he goes. I'm really indifferent to it.
The crazy part about that, too, is with this whole situation, just kind of a bit of a tangent. Travis, what you just mentioned, that's what the Colts have. They have a guy on a rookie quarterback scale. They have the money to pay one of the best running backs in the league, and they're just simply not doing it. You have Jim Irsay, the loose cannon that he is, coming out and basically alienating his player. For what reason? None. So you're going to make your offense that much worse after you just drafted a guy that I'm a huge fan of, Anthony Richardson, but you want to surround him with as much talent as possible. It makes no sense to me. I'm sorry.
Here's the thing for me too, actually, taking the emotional part out of it, which was my initial response to this. I'm curious about what happened with this whole thing, right? Because we hear he wants the new money, he wants a new contract. And then we hear that he's got an injury, but then he comes out and he says that he doesn't have an injury, but then he does have an injury and he's missing time in training camp. And Jim Irsay was like, I'm not trading this guy. I don't care what you want. You're not going anywhere. And now he wants to trade him? Like, what? There's something going on there too, that it seems that kind of just makes me nervous about the whole thing.
Right.
What do they know that we don't know yet about Jonathan Taylor? And that speaks to, Travis, what you said. Maybe his best football is behind him. Maybe he is starting to get dinged up. Or, I just don't know. There's been a lot of craziness around that situation so far.
Yeah, to try to tie it back to Eagles related, Travis, you brought up hopefully it doesn't go anywhere in the NFC East, and Brandon, you brought up some places in the AFC, and specifically the AFC East, which is the division that the Eagles are playing this year. I don't necessarily think that the Colts would trade him within the AFC. And as far as an NFC East team goes, the only one that I would think that could potentially trade for him would be the Commanders, because Cowboys got Tony Pollard, which they got him on the who's a what's it, the what's that called, the tag, the
franchise
tag. That's the word. The Giants have Saquon, which they just paid him. It's only a 1-year thing, but Commanders have Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. If there is a team in the NFC East that I would see potentially trading for him, it would be them. I'm not entirely sure how that would go, since their ownership is just now solidified, or I don't know how the timetable for any of that kind of stuff works, but that would be the only team that I could see in the AFC East that would trade for him. Does that make sense, or am I thinking dumb brain?
That's absolutely what that's kind of absolutely what I was thinking in my head. It's just, they have a young quarterback, first-year starter, and Sam Howell. You don't really know what you have with him. And, that's a guy who could take those carries if he's healthy. And I think when you have that new ownership group, they want to make a splash. They want to show the fans that they're different. But
It'd be a hell of a
throwing money
first
at the problem is a very Dan Snyder thing to do, but it would definitely sell some jerseys there.
Yeah, and if the Commanders traded for him, I'd be like, oh, okay, Jonathan Taylor's not that good. Because it seems like that's who they kind of grab. It's just people aren't good. It's like Bears drafting a wide receiver.
I also think, and I completely agree with the Commanders' point, but I could see Dallas jumping in, especially if Tony Pollard isn't there from his injury recovery where they might think he is, because I feel like that's their biggest thing. They have no running back depth behind Pollard. And, Deuce Vaughn's looked great in the preseason. Are you going to rely on Deuce Vaughn if Tony Pollard isn't himself? So I feel like Dallas would be the team that would take the shot on the guy. Yeah. Now, are you giving him the extension and not extending Pollard and letting him walk? That's a completely different discussion about in that sense. But I think just in a vacuum, once again, Dallas would be a really good fit, considering I think he would fit what they're trying to do. He would fit their strengths, and he would give them more running back depth and give you a very good 1-2 combination. But there's some other things that go into that where it's like might not be the most realistic option.
Yeah. Yeah, they're creaming their Wranglers over the Deuce Vaughn thing. I don't know.
But see, that's the thing, Jake. Dallas Cowboys, their fans, their people in the front office, whatever, even their players, they're kind of delusional sometimes, right? Okay. If you think that Tony Pollard is going to be your workhorse running back behind a line that already wasn't phenomenal last year, it was okay. It wasn't phenomenal. We already know the problems that they had protecting Dak, running the ball, this and that. They were fine. But it's another year with some of those guys getting older, and Tony Pollard is already banged up, right? So you think he's going to be your workhorse? People on the outside, like us, I think it would be smart for them to try to get Jonathan Taylor to be their premier back and still relegate Tony Pollard to that secondary back role. But I don't think that they think that. Speaking to the delusion, y'all heard Dak Prescott say that the standard for the Cowboys is the Super Bowl. No, it's not. No, that's not how standards work. You don't win a bunch 30 years ago and like the standard remains the same. Things change. There's an evolutionary thing. You've fallen off, okay? The desire to have a set standard is not the same as a standard still being set, so you can want all you want, you can desire, you can hope and wish, but
my standard on the ACT was a 36 and I got a 21, so I get it. All right, other news story, this one we can keep a lot shorter. Miles Jack retired. He got picked up and then he was like, you know what, I think being a plumber, being an electrician might actually be the thing to do. What was kind of weird that stuck out to me about it was that when he announced it, he was speaking in the third person. And he said, now it's always going to be jacking off season.
He didn't say that, did he? He didn't really say that.
No, but it was a pretty good joke.
God damn. Look, the only thing that I have on that is maybe he decided, because we know being a backup in the NFL is a pretty good job, right? Even if you don't win the starting position, if you can get yourself on the roster, you're making money to not do a ton. Maybe he decided that he was tired of getting hit, he was tired of running in there and throwing in his body into these car crash collisions, and he's just like, you know what? I can go make an earnest living, as a plumber and electrician. I don't know. The whole thing is weird to me.
Also, he has $25 million in the bank, so that's helpful.
That's very helpful. So, you really don't have to rush the plumber electrician thing. Go to Thailand or something like Jonathan Gannon did, or whoever that was that just
Kingsbury. It was Kingsbury.
Kingsbury. Yeah. Go link up with Kingsbury and go have some fun.
Okay. Hey, Kingsbury came back. He's the USC offensive coordinator now.
Oh, great. Lateral move.
Yeah, maybe it's a little more expensive over there these days. Inflation hits everywhere.
But what do you call it? On a serious note with Jack, I thought he was going to be a nice depth option for the Eagles, just extending that linebacker room to the point where you're not having a panic attack if one of the starters goes down. But for him, I'd say, no real major injuries once he got to the NFL. He dealt with the injuries that honestly, when he was coming out of the draft, he should have been a first round pick. He slid to the second round, had a really good career. He's young, he has money in the bank, and he's overall healthy, and he now can do what he wants. And from an Eagles perspective, doesn't really hurt them at the end of the day. You still have the guys that you expect to have, -1. I didn't expect Miles Jack to be just this game-changing player that has 200 tackles and just is the reason why the Eagles win 5 games. No, I thought he was going to be a solid starter at best. So it's good for him. Doesn't really hurt the Eagles. You live, you move on, you sign another linebacker if it comes to that.
Yeah, the thing that with the whole situation that really stuck out to me was like he in press conference he did, I think it was this previous week just before he announced it. He was going in there a little bit more in depth about how the Eagles called him for a workout and he just flew out thinking it was like a one-day thing, and he ended up staying and coming on and was like in a hotel living out of a suitcase pretty much and had to go buy a bunch of clothes and stuff. But he also said like that was the NFL and that's what he loved about it. And it was really weird how he was kind of saying like even though it all happened very fast, he seemed very, very in the moment and was happy with it. And it's really weird that he just kind of turned on a dime and decided to retire. And it makes you wonder maybe he did kind of get back in the driver's seat and think these hits are adding up a little too fast and it's better to just call it quits now versus having a Vontae Davis situation, week 1 halftime saying, never mind, I shouldn't have done this. But
yeah, it's like a dude at a bachelor party, like going to Vegas for a bachelor party. He's like, oh man, I should just stay here. And then he stays there for a week and he's like, no, I got to retire from gambling. And then he does just that. That's the Miles Jack in Philadelphia experience.
When I was younger,
forever now, never going to hear from him again.
When I was younger, I thought that it might be cool to move and live in like New Orleans, and I was close to the downtown area. No disrespect to anybody from New Orleans. One of my best friends is from New Orleans, but it wasn't for me. About 3 weeks later, I pivoted and went to Dallas. So. Sometimes you think things are going to be great. You make a decision and you find out that maybe not. So, hey, it happens to all of us sometimes.
John, did you just do to New Orleans? Did you just do I have a black friend? Is that what you just did? No offense to people from New Orleans. I have a friend in New Orleans.
No. Yeah, great place to visit. Great place to visit. You know what I'm saying? But I don't need to live there.
All right, so let's get into the meat of things. We're going to talk fantasy stuff. Actually, before we do that, if you're watching this on Facebook, I'm going to post it in the comment. I just put it in the comments on Facebook now. The link to the YouTube page. You should go watch it on there, or also do both at the same time. Because, like I said last week, if we get to 3 consecutive shows with 500 people or with 500 views, I will drink 8 fluid ounces of my own urine. And we didn't get there with last week. So if you guys go and you want to watch it on YouTube, same deal. Same comments are going to come up. So if you want to do that, so make sure you do that, and that'll be fun. All right, but let's get in.
Wait. How close are we? How close are we?
Listen. Fridays, it's better off for mentals if we don't think about it. Not. My answer is not. We're not close. But again, 3 consecutive at 500, and your boy's going to be in deep.
When is the deadline for that?
It's just ongoing, which I understand puts me at quite in quite the corner.
You can keep kicking the rock down the road.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen. Okay, so we're going to talk fantasy. So everybody knows that when you're doing fantasy, it's much more fun when you get your guys on your team. All right. And the problem, quote problem, it's a good problem to have with having a good team, is that a lot of your guys start going early. And we're going to talk about this. Like last year, AJ Brown was like getting drafted in like the second round. It gave you a lot more opportunity to get him. This year, he's going in like the first round, late or maybe late first, early second round. So you want to make sure you get your guys, but also do a smart move. Like if you're drafting first in your league, yeah, you want Jalen Hurts, but it's not necessarily a smart option to make. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about where guys are going and when is too early to draft somebody. Does that kind of make sense for everybody?
Yes, indeed.
Sweet. Okay. So I think we talked about this before. Maybe the best way that we go about this is we go the ADP, the average draft position for these guys, and it's the consensus ADP. So it's not like what it is on ESPN, Yahoo, CBS Sports, if you use that one. It's like all of those kind of averaged out and put together. And we'll talk, I think, because you three, it sounds like you guys all do the PPR, the points per reception, for the people who don't quite know what that is, because I know a lot of people, if I say like, hey, do you have a PPR league or a non-PPR league? They're like, I don't know. Chances are it's probably PPR because that's the most famous one now. Essentially what that means is it means that more guys there's more guys available to give you more points. Like that makes sense, I think.
It's points per reception. So
yeah.
The receivers have a lot more value.
Correct.
It's not, you're not just relying on the yardage from them and the touchdowns. It's actually rewarding more of the offensive players.
Correct. And when we come up to some of the big differences here, there's a few guys on this Eagles roster that have a pretty significant average depth position between PPR and standard.
That's a very roundabout way of just saying every skill position player gets one extra point every time they catch the ball.
Essentially.
Yeah, just to make sure that we're clear.
Yep. And what that does is it makes some positions like quarterback a little bit more valuable since they don't catch the ball. It makes them more valuable in standard, and makes some guys like a Tyler Boyd for the Bengals more valuable because he might not get the most yardage, but he catches the ball. You guys get it. Yes, so let's start with the guy who is consensusly is a word, I'm sure of it, who is by consensus going the earliest. AJ Brown, his ADP for PPR is 14. So what that means is that he is going early second round. What do you guys think is too early to pick up AJ Brown? Would you guys pick him up in the first round? Would you wait? What are your guys' thoughts?
So AJ Brown, it all depends, because you look at some of the other guys that you could get around him, and you're talking about the Justin Jeffersons, the Jamar Chases of the world, and the Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs category. And for me personally, AJ Brown is a guy I would like to target. But for me, I'm preferring if I get someone first and then I can get him on, let's say you're picking number 10 in your draft. On the swing around, I want to get him with that early second round pick. So I don't want to use that first round pick on him over, a Jefferson, a Chase, maybe a Tyreek Hill. But once you're getting to that Cooper Kupp, I could make a great argument that Brown's a better investment because of the quarterback play and the overall roster that the Eagles have. You could argue that Brown's a better investment than Diggs. But at the same time, there is the risk that comes into it. He's not the only target. AJ Brown does have the potential to have some down weeks. You have Devonta Smith. You have Dallas Goedert. You don't know what the number 3 wide receiver situation is going to be. So that's the only small concern that I have with him, because he's going to have that great production, but is he replicating last year? And how much are the other receivers' development and progression as players going to eat into his target share?
Let me interrupt one thing. I should have said this before, and I'll probably do this for the other people that we bring up. The guys that are going around him, Devontae Adams is at 13. Or CeeDee Lamb is at 11. Devontae Adams is at 13. So those are two guys that are going before him. The two guys that are going after him, wide receiver wise, is Garrett Wilson and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So just to give everybody kind of an idea of the other kind of receivers that are getting drafted in that area.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect range for him.
This is my thing and this is a kind of a two-pronged answer here. I'm an emotional person when it comes to the Eagles, right? I'm overly emotional when it comes to them. I've been burned in the past in fantasy because of my emotions and trying so hard to get them that I reach. So for the past couple of years, my rule is actually not to draft Eagles players. And so unless it's a complete no-brainer, obvious, it would be stupid not to, then I may avoid, some of the Eagles unless it's like Jalen Hurts, right? But I have, I don't know, I have this strong feeling this year, and maybe it could not happen just because of the relationship that Jalen Hurts has with AJ Brown, right? That bit of bias, but and not like it's a bad thing because it works out great. But Devontae Smith this year, I feel like is going to go nuts. I feel like he's the one that it's going to end up being the more productive player of the two this year. Just his route running is so damn good. It's so crisp. It's only getting better. The relationship and the that he has with Hertz also is only going to be improving in this, third year with him. So, I love AJ Brown, of course, and drafting him high in that like second round, like Brandon said, because he's not going to be there for the third. That's fair. Getting Devontae Smith, it should be a big priority as well if people are looking to draft, those Eagles receivers. I think he's going to be the one who does the best.
Yeah. Kind of ironically, the only receiver that I would draft in the first round would be Justin Jefferson. I know that's ironic for the Eagles fan to say, but
not Jalen Reagor.
No, I think he's a little bit further down the draft board this year. But what I always like to do, like in a perfect world in fantasy, I always like to be picking towards the end of the first round, so I can kind of double up on two starting running backs. That's always a strategy that I really like to follow. Like maybe like this year, try and get like a Nick Chubb and maybe Josh Jacobs or a Derrick Henry or a Najee Harris in the early second. And then I also have a theory that wide receiver twos, the best wide receiver twos, are the most valuable receivers in all of fantasy. Like this is something I kind of started doing with like Juju Smith-Schuster when he was still beloved by the world in his first or second year in Pittsburgh, and he did really well. And I feel like if you got a guy like I completely agree with cousin Jalil over there, is that Devontae Smith, he's going to be the one, and he's going to be a really productive receiver in fantasy this year. And your other upper echelon wide receiver twos like T. Higgins or a Jalen Waddle, those are guys where if you're looking for a wide receiver, maybe you wait a little bit, and that's where you can get your best value out of the position.
Okay, yeah, I like all that, and the kind of the. I think so. The sweet spot, it sounds like what we're saying, is going to kind of exactly where he's at, because you wouldn't want to put a first round pick on him. Kind of like what Travis said. Really, for him at least, the only guy that he wants to get as a wide receiver is Justin Jefferson. I would think that a Jamar Chase could be up there too. Really depends on what your strategy is. But the good thing about if you don't get AJ Brown is that you will have that opportunity for a Devontae Smith. Now I know that we said that we were going to go ADP wise, go down that, but let's talk about Devontae Smith since he's kind of already going on here, and then we'll talk about Jalen. Devontae Smith, his ADP for PPR is 25th. He's the 12th ranked wide receiver. Guys near him is Jalen Waddle and Chris Olave of the Saints. So what do you, I mean, are you guys more, it sounds like we kind of all have Devontae targeted, like rather than like if you're going to absolutely hit that home run with AJ Brown falling to you. Sounds like we're more all in on making sure that we grab Devontae Smith.
Yeah,
Are
I
we
mean,
sure that Chris Olave is should be that high? Like I like Derek Carr and all, but I mean, I feel like I've been hearing so much in the offseason about Chris Olave, and I just don't feel it like other people seem to. Am I missing something?
nah, I completely agree. I feel like Derek Carr is a guy where he gets elevated by his receivers. If he has a guy like Amari Cooper or Darren Waller or Devontae Adams, that's where he gets his best football in, and he's doing well, and his receivers are doing well. But Chris Olave, I don't really know if he's established enough in the league to be able to him and Derek Carr mutually elevate each other like that, especially if Michael Thomas isn't staying healthy and their offensive line is a little shoddy and they can't really let the deep routes develop the way that Olave likes.
Yeah, the only thing that gives me any kind of juice for Chris Olave is I don't believe in Michael Thomas. Who else is going to catch the ball?
I'm going to have to push back with the Olave sentiment. I think he's going to be one of the bigger breakouts this year at the wide receiver position. I think look at Derek Carr. He's sustained his number one target in fantasy every single year. I mean, Devontae Adams had an insane year last year, and who's the quarterback? Derek Carr. Darren Waller, number one target. Great years with Derek Carr. Now, is he the best quarterback? No, but he's been able to sustain number one options very well. And Olave is far and away the Saints' number one option. He had a great year with Jameis Winston and the wide array of just quarterbacks that played for the Saints last year. He is going to play very, very well with Derek Carr under center. With that being said, I still would have a toss-up between him and Devontae. Only reason that I want to go Devonta Smith is because he's a wide receiver too. Olave in that range is still a wide receiver one that you can get at a range where you're already looking at some wide receiver twos. On most teams, Devonta Smith is a team's number one. And I think he could still have great production. But in this specific scenario where you're saying Olave is going right near Smith, I'm taking Olave most times because, number one, it depends on your roster construction. If you're picking your first wide receiver at that point, I don't want a number two as my number one wide receiver in fantasy. I want to make sure I'm having a guy that is going to get a big amount of targets. And then you also don't know once again, to my AJ Brown point, you don't know the full scale of the offense. You don't know how much the Eagles are going to throw the ball. And you don't know if Smith is going to get close to those numbers, exceed those numbers, or regress from those numbers, which, hey, that's half the battle, but it's all about risk reward when it comes to fantasy.
Now, this is my thing though. With all of those number ones that Derek Carr had that, you said he sustained, Darren Waller was a top 5 tight end. He's top 5 at his position. Devontae Adams is like the best in the league, top 3, top 5. Amari Cooper is one of the best route runners in the league, hands down. So, where does Chris Olave fall? On the scale and the talent, amongst compared to those other guys, I'm just not sure yet. So I don't know that it's going to be the same. It's going to be a different offense, a different scene. I know their offensive line is supposed to be fairly solid. So I mean, I don't know. Like we're talking about Devontae Adams. You know what I'm saying? So it'll be interesting to see. And a lot of people are very high up on him. So like I said, maybe I'm wrong. But we'll see.
I mean. He also sustained Hunter Renfrow when Renfrow was the main wide receiver option for the Raiders.
You seen them routes that Hunter Renfrow be running?
Olave is a great route runner too. Like Olave was up there with the Garrett Wilson class as one of the best wide receiver prospects coming out. There's a reason why, and not saying it was a great trade, but there's a reason why the Saints traded up to get him. he has that upper echelon talent, and he's developed even more so from his Ohio State days. There's like that wide receiver room between Olave, Garrett Wilson. They had, I'm pretty sure, JSN at that point too. Like, there's a reason all those guys were as highly valued as they were. They were all great prospects, and I think Olave, as good as he was last year, has potential to take that big leap. And I guess that's a big part of it. I'm banking on him taking that step forward.
I want to give a little love to Hunter Renfrow, though. I love those guys. You know, he fits that like Julian Edelman, Wes Welker role, those slot guys that are super shifty and know how to leverage their routes to get open. And, you know, those guys sometimes get a little underrated, you know, but I'm always big on them.
Now to bring it back to the Devontae Smith thing, so current where he's going, if you're doing a 10-team league, he's currently going in the middle of round 3. Is he a guy, give it like say you had, so what is he ranked? He's ranked 12th. Say you had 10 wide receivers go off the board. So the guys that are left up there now, Amon-Ra, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Chris Olave. Say it's a weird situation and those guys have come off the board and you are, say you have one of the last picks of the second round. Is Devontae Smith a guy that you would go for there? And A.J. Brown is off the board too. And you want to get an Eagles wide receiver because you want to get some part of the production that's coming off. You want a part of that offense. Do you reach for Devontae Smith at the end of the second round or at the beginning of the third round?
Well, at that point, I might not jump the gun with Smith, but I might be targeting a Dallas Goedert a little bit earlier than some other people might. If you really want to invest in that Eagles offense.
Okay.
Yeah, I got to agree with that. You know, it's really hard to say, like, if the receivers are off the board, it's really hard to reach in round 3. And I feel like getting a good tight end, if you wait to see if you can get Goddard in around 5, I don't know where he's projected, but if you take 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and maybe a quarterback, and you try to see if Goddard's there in even round 6, I feel like if you can get that tight end who has really a pretty high ceiling and a pretty high floor as well,
right,
as long as he stays healthy, and you can get that competitive advantage there at your tight end position, I don't know. I don't think I'd take Devontae Smith in the second, but if I was picking in the third and he was there, I would take him in the third.
Okay.
And that's the thing, because you said towards the end of the second round, which most likely means that you're going to be picking towards the beginning of the third round.
Correct.
So there's that chance that Devontae Smith will still be there, and I will probably wait for then to try to see if I can get him. If not, then I agree with Brandon. Then I'm trying to see if I can get Dallas Goedert, because that tight end position is one that once you fall off some of those top guys, right, it's really bad. You know, the inconsistency from the tight end position around the league is apparent, you know, the past few years. Once you get past, really, it's like, I don't know, the top 5 or 6, you might be coming out of some weeks with like 6 points from your tight end.
Yeah.
You know? So that's one position that I always try to see if I can get one of those top guys, you know, without overreaching too much, but I definitely keep my eye on it, because it's just like that for the tight end position.
Yeah, and we'll hit on Dallas Goedert, but Travis, he is currently, his ADP is 60, so that is the what would that be, the end of the 6th round, beginning of the 7th round, around there. But let's talk Jalen Hurts. All right, Jalen Hurts is PPR. His ADP is 23. Standard is 22. He is the 3rd ranked quarterback overall. So that means that it is what is that? That dork guy that you guys all like and that I don't like, Mahomes, Josh Allen are getting picked before him, and then Joe Burrow is getting picked after him. Now, I know that's one thing that a lot of people, there's the smart move and there's the fun move in fantasy. And if you wanted to pick a quarterback in the first round, like if you don't have a top 6 pick in the first round, you could you could probably pick a quarterback. And I don't think a lot of people, it would be dumb, but you could do it and it would be fun. Jalen Hurts is currently going at the beginning of the 3rd round. I know a lot of people have different rules about where they draft their quarterbacks. I guess that would be a good spot to start, so we know where we're coming from. Where do you guys typically like to draft your quarterbacks in fantasy?
So if I can start with this, my thought process with this has changed. So when I first started playing fantasy, I was late round quarterback. I'm going to get someone at the end of the draft. There's good enough guys. I'm not going to worry about it. If I need to pick someone up off the waiver wire, I will. And for a while that worked. But now, if you really look at the best quarterbacks in fantasy, that separation it's a lot bigger margin. It used to be here, it's out here. Why is that? The best guys are the guys that can do both. They can throw the ball at an efficient level and a high level while also giving you running production. Jalen Hurts fits that to a T. My new age kind of thought process with this now goes a little something along the lines of, I'm targeting the elite quarterbacks 2nd or 3rd round, and if I don't get one of them, then I'm waiting. I'm not reaching on the number 7 or 8 guy. I'm going to wait at that point. But if a Jalen Hurts is sitting there for me, and let's face it, in the 3rd round or the late 2nd round, and I don't like the running backs or receivers on the board, I'm not reaching for a tight end yet, why not take the shot on the quarterback that is not only going to give you passing production, but especially with how fantasy leagues are shaped, it's a cheat code. You're getting rushing production from your quarterback on top of whatever running backs you have.
I'm with you on that. I had to give you the people's eyebrow when you said drafting him at in the 1st round, towards the end of the 1st round, Jake. That's a big no for me. And see, I have to reiterate something I said in the past episode here, where I'm a competitor, and you said, it might be fun. No. Winning is fun. Okay. Hey, I'm not out here just to, draft guys just to say I got them on the roster, but then I'm out here losing games. That's not going to do it for me. So I'm with Brandon, somebody like a Jalen Hurts. And I think that Lamar Jackson is being underrated now because of his injury last year. And granted, yes, if he can stay healthy, Lamar Jackson should be right up there, right, with those other guys. I'd put him over Joe Burrow. Sorry, Joe. Love Joe. He's great. Awesome. By the way, nobody ever talks about Joe Burrow having too many weapons, do they? But I digress. I'm going to take Jalen Hurts as soon as possible. Same thing. If I don't get one of those like top 3 or 4 quarterbacks, then I'm going to wait on it. But and I'm always disappointed if I don't get them, because they're pretty much going to average like 25 plus a game. Those rushing touchdowns, they add up. Those points are crucial. And yeah, I agree. That margin from the elite to the lesser is way too large now to ignore.
What about you, Travis?
Yeah, I actually completely agree with Brandon. I used to be a pretty big wait on the quarterback, because in years past, it really did used to be like between quarterback 2 or 3 and quarterback 15 to 20, you would maybe only be losing like an average of 3 or 4 points a game. And now, like looking at the list in front of me, it's huge what the drop off is in average points a game. Like from 1 to 10, you can be missing out on a whole 8 points a game. And that adds up over the course of 16 weeks. And I definitely would be disappointed if I got Jalen Hurts or missed out on Jalen Hurts. But I also wouldn't want to take him in the 1st round. But if there's not a running back or a receiver I feel good about in the 2nd round, I'd take him there. Or if he's in the 3rd round, I would 100% pull the trigger. But yeah, really just to sum it up, that I agree with what the other 2 guys have been saying. Maybe I wouldn't try to wait too long on a quarterback, just because the drop off is still pretty big. Maybe try to get someone who is going to consistently be able to put up like 20 points at least, maybe try and get like a Lamar Jackson or a Justin Herbert who's a little bit undervalued. Because really, there's only so many starting spots you can fill. If in the first 4 rounds you're getting 2 running backs and 2 wide receivers, and maybe you get another tight end later to play the flex, you could always try and do that and take a quarterback who you're pretty confident in, even if it's not Jalen Hurts. But he's definitely a guy I would love to have on my team.
Now,
do you mind real quick, Jack?
Go for it.
Ideally, if you're really trying to get you some Eagles players, if you had like an early pick somewhere around like 3 or 4, get someone like Nick Chubb in the first round would be phenomenal. I love Nick Chubb. In the second round, if you can get Jalen towards the end of that second round, and then like Devontae Smith at the beginning of the third, I think you're really cooking with grease. You know what I'm saying? You got something really going there. That would be spectacular.
Where in my situation, so I'm in a league and a bunch of dummies, bunch of real idiots. Like the guy who's picking second, I know, Dan, love you. You're gonna pick Patrick Mahomes. We all know it. You do it every goddamn year. Sean, he picks fourth this year. He's gonna pick Josh Allen. They're those 2 guys, and I'm picking first in that draft, and I'm like, well, God damn it, somebody's going to pick. Like, the next guy up is Jalen Hurts to pick in that quarterback run, and in my head, I'm not going to get him. But they're idiots. But like in my head, I'm doing these mock drafts and I'm picking first. It's a 12-team league. I'm actually able, like, if I can get Jalen at that turn from the second to third round, I'm absolutely doing that. I guess my question for you guys is, do you believe, or not do you believe, but say you're in a position where you want to draft a quarterback, you got your first 3 picks and you're like, I'm pretty well set here. And the opportunity comes for you and you could pick the first quarterback off of the board. Would you pick Jalen above Josh or Patrick Mahomes?
I'm picking him above Josh.
I will never pick Patrick Mahomes in a fantasy league. I'm never going to hit Patrick Mahomes, and Dak Prescott will never be on a fantasy team of mine ever. I just can't do it.
Patrick Mahomes is a total bum, and
I can't. I don't care how many points he picks up. If I am not enjoying watching him playing well, I do not want him on my team. Kind of like how Jalil he is emotional towards the Eagles. I'm going to be petty. I'm going to be the other side of the coin.
Absolutely.
If you're going to play. If you're going to be a player I don't like, I don't want you playing on my fantasy team. I'll miss out on an Eagle and I'll miss out on Hurts in round 2 or 3, and I'll be upset. But that still doesn't mean I'll pick Mahomes in round 5 or 6 if he somehow falls.
I respect it. I'm the same way with like the division guys. I'm not picking a Cowboys player. They're not going on my roster. It's not happening. It's not happening. No Giants players. I'm sorry. Oh, Saquon is the pick here for you, not for me.
We'll have to do a show later on to find out which teams Ja is actually comfortable picking from. It seems like that pool is getting smaller and smaller. We're down to 20 teams.
I'll jump in here. Winning matters above everything else to me. So I don't really have that conviction. I would take Mahomes over Hurts, and Allen's the first one where I'm like, I could definitely argue taking Hurts over Josh Allen. It's more of a coin flip for me. You know, I think Hurts, and fantasy is all about value. It's where are these guys in relative range to their ADP, and you know, if this guy falls at this point, are you taking him because you're getting a bargain, or are you reaching for a guy? But all things considered, Hurts probably is my second quarterback I would take, but Mahomes is Mahomes. Like the guy is a magician. He's magical, and I would probably take him over most quarterbacks, even if, you know, all things are considered.
A magician. He does magic. He doesn't do things that are real. All of his numbers are fake. He's lame.
I'm good with Mahomes.
I'd rather start Marcus Mariota than Patrick Mahomes.
you talking about Eminem? You talking about Eminem? Come on now. because he's
Flying to one.
after those preseason games, that man has lost pretty much all the letters in his name. So Marcus Mariota is now
we're doing that.
Just a
Eminem.
blank
is what I'm calling
nameplate
him
on the
right
jersey.
Speaking of blank nameplates, you guys see that thing from Madden 24 on all the Dolphins uniforms? Something happened and there's no eyes on any of the uniforms. It's very weird.
Man,
There's a space.
Madden
There's a
is-
space on the nameplate, but no.
Don't, all right, you guys have your things with different teams and players. Madden's like my trigger word. It's like I cannot stand that video game. I hate it with a burning passion.
I get sucked into it every year. I paid for the deluxe edition to get early access to it, and the game doesn't even load. You pay for early access, and it's like, sorry, you can't get online until the game actually comes out in 4 days. It's ridiculous.
They haven't got my money for 3 straight years, and I'm planning on keeping it that way this year as well.
You're stronger than I am for that.
They got the wild card football coming out in October. That game looks fun. Look that up if you haven't. Looks like it's made by people that didn't do NBA Street or NBA Jam. There's another NBA game.
Playgrounds. It was NBA Playgrounds.
Yeah, it was made by those same people. Looks good. But let's talk Dallas Goedert. Like we said before, ADP is 60. So that means that he is going late 6th round, early 7th round. Or no, late 6th round, early 7th round. That's PPR. This is one of those guys that has a big gap between PPR and standard scoring. Standard scoring, he's going 69th. Nice. But yeah, so there's a big gap there, and it makes sense. You look at his play style, a lot of receptions, and I mean, he's a yak machine, but that anyway. Dallas Goedert, late 6th. I have found myself doing these mock drafts. I'm picking him up earlier, and I think that's an emotional thing. I don't understand how he could be going so late.
I completely agree. I feel like I'd feel completely comfortable taking him in round 5 if I was, if you miss out on a top quarterback like Hurts or Allen, and there's no one else in the top 3. It's just those 2. No Mahomes. But there's really no point in not taking him, because I feel like if you can get that positional value at tight end, I feel like tight end is the most underrated position. In my personal opinion, it's the most underrated position in fantasy. And if you can get a tight end who can even just get 8 or 9 points per game, you're doing significantly better than more than half your league, because there's really not too many tight ends who can consistently get that average, or tight ends who are really a big part of the offense. And if you have the defenses paying attention to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, that really opens up a lot of plays for Goddard. And I feel like you're going to see Goddard have a pretty good year this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a top 2 or 3 fantasy tight end. And getting him around 6 would be a steal.
I agree with that. I'm trying to take him in round 5, and part of that is out of fear, because at that point, Travis Kelce is gone, Mark Andrews is gone, probably George Kittle is gone. People still think that he's better than Goddard, which I don't think he is. But at that point, you're just getting into a territory that's it's a little dangerous if you're going to wait too long to get a tight end. So I'm with Travis. I'm probably snagging him in the 5th round if I can, and I'm going to feel really good about that.
I think for me, looking at the guys, Kelce, I think is going to go a lot earlier than a lot of people are going to be comfortable with taking a tight end. But he's been that game changer type player at the position. The only concern is, when does that fall off come? It's kind of like the Derrick Henry thing. You never know. Mark Andrews, a lot of his production, as we saw last year, predicated on Lamar Jackson being healthy. So those 2 are kind of intertwined in my eyes. Then you have, I think, the only guy I would argue that could still be ahead of Goddard in a sense is Darren Waller, solely because I think he might get 100+ targets from Daniel Jones this year. I think he's going to be, by far and away, the number 1 target in what I think is going to be a pretty good Giants offense. So that's the one guy I'd argue. But Goddard's no less than the number 4 tight end for me. I think he's a safer pick than Kyle Pitts. Pitts might have a higher ceiling, but let's see what Desmond Ridder can do, right? Kittle's one of those guys, and I think everyone that plays fantasy will understand this, where you get burned by him once and you're just like, I don't think I'm drafting him again. Amazing talent, great player, there's too much talent on the 49ers offense, and considering who they have at quarterback in Brock Purdy, I don't think he's the type of quarterback that can support Kittle, Debo, Ayuk, McCaffrey, whoever else is on that offense. I think Kittle, more times than not, is going to be that guy left out. And then TJ Hawkinson, high floor. I don't think he has that high of a ceiling, especially when you have Justin Jefferson. You just drafted Jordan Addison. Hawkinson's no better than the number 2 option. That changes if Jefferson sits out a little bit, because then I think Hawkinson becomes that number 1 target. But, after that, it's Fryer, Njoku, Dulcich, Ingram. Like, you're in like I'm going to throw a dart and hopefully it works out territory.
Yeah, if I'm not getting, I'm trying to think of the best way to say that. If I'm not getting Dallas Goedert, I'd say he's at like the top of the tier 2 tight ends, at least to me. I like him more than Mark Andrews. I like him more than George Kittle. Travis Kelce, I would, if somebody drafted him in the first round, I would be like, I don't hate that pick. But like, if I'm not getting Dallas Goedert, I'm in more of a situation where I'm just probably going to just stream tight ends through the entire season. That's a position where I'm totally comfortable with that, just because you don't know what the hell's going to happen week after week. What it sounded like, kind of based on what we were talking about before, is that Dallas Goedert seems like kind of the guy that we're all comfortable targeting on this Eagles offense, except for Ja, because he's a goddamn psychopath and hates his own team, but he does like winning, so don't worry about that. Does that seem accurate?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Dallas Goedert's the guy I would be the most upset if I didn't get. And circling back around to the guys in front of him, it makes no sense to me why Kyle Pitts is considered above him. And something that the Falcons have done that has really annoyed me is, so that they draft Kyle Pitts 4th overall. Then they draft Drake London, also in the top 10. And then last season, they weren't really using either of them. And their head coach, Arthur Smith, is saying like, I don't care about your fantasy teams. Like, that's not the situation, man. You drafted these guys top 10 and you don't use them in your offense. It's like, you're the one that's burning real life draft picks. It's not fantasy when you pick guys top 10 and you don't play them in your offense.
Don't worry, they got Bijan.
And he comes out as running back 3 behind Alger and who else was in front of him? Is it Cordell Patterson still in front of him?
No.
Or did he go elsewhere?
Is Cordell Patterson is he a Bear now?
No, I think he's still in Atlanta. I think he might be hurt.
I remember seeing that Bijan came into like the preseason as their running back 3.
That might have been the same kind of the depth chart that the PR people put out, where they said that Brett Toth was second center for the Eagles. It's like, well, that's just because you were trying to put names on a piece of paper. So yeah, I don't believe that.
It was Patterson.
It speaks to, like, you hear about the camp that the Eagles have had so far, and one of the things I've heard was that Kenny Gainwell has been with the ones more than anybody. And it's like, you can talk that crap all you want, but on game day, everybody knows that DeAndre Swift is the number 1, and if for some strange reason Sirianni rolled out Kenny Gainwell consistently more than DeAndre Swift, we'd be looking at him with a side eye.
I heard something. And we can bring this in while we're running short on time. We might go a little bit over if that's okay with you guys.
I'm good.
Okay. Kenny. So talking about running backs, talking about Kenny Gainwell specifically, I heard something or saw something. Kenny Gainwell, 33 games that he's played. In 11 of those games, he's got like 1 rushing attempt in 11 out of his 33 games. Now, Kenny Gainwell, his ADP is 183. Unless you're doing a 12-team league, he's not getting drafted, is essentially what that's saying. But let's talk about the other running backs. DeAndre Swift, ADP is 69. Nice. Rashad Penny is 128. Kenny Gainwell, like I said, is 183. Boston Scott is not even listed. Are you guys, in any sense, looking at taking an Eagles running back on your fantasy team?
No,
Running
Yes.
backs by committee terrify me.
I agree.
I'm looking to take DeAndre Swift as a flex at best.
Where would you feel comfortable drafting him? Because currently he is going at the end of the 7th round.
Too early. I'm looking 8, 9, 10. I'm looking 8, 9, 10, where I'm starting to feel good, where maybe I have 2 running backs and a solid receiver, or 2 running backs, 2 receivers, a quarterback, and now it's like I don't need Swift to perform well to really carry my team as I would if he was a running back 2, or if you're taking him as an RB1, I have no idea what you're doing. But if you're getting him in that later range, if you miss on DeAndre Swift, okay, you're drafting other guys that are going to help you. So it's that, once again, it's that specific range of drafting where if I get him at a late enough point, I feel happy, versus if I'm drafting him early, I'm like, I hope it's not as running back by committee as I think.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those. If you don't get him, it's like shoot dang, but you're not punching air or anything like that. You're like not trying to fight the person who did pick him. Rashad Penny, is that something that you guys would put a late round flyer on or anything like that, or is he somebody that you're staying away from just because of injuries and stuff like that? Because currently he would be going at the end of round 13.
The way I look at it is really Rashad Penny. He's a guy who, more likely than not, is probably going to turn into a little bit of a touchdown vulture if he is consistently healthy and in the offense. And what I fear the most is you have Swift play in the first half or the first 3 quarters and rack up all the yards. And then in goal line situations, Penny plays and maybe he gets 4 carries for 12 yards and a touchdown. And then once, if the Eagles, kind of like how we saw last year, if they're in the second half late in games and they're blowing teams out of the water, they switch to more running with Kenneth Gainwell, more focused on controlling the clock than they are at actually getting touchdowns, especially on the ground. And really, it's just the whole running back room really scares me. And in a perfect world, I would have my running back 1 and 2 already filled long before DeAndre Swift is available around round 7. And maybe if he's there in round 9, I definitely would take a flyer on him as a flex. But just the whole running back room really, really scares me. And in a perfect world, I wouldn't really draft any of them.
Yeah, Rashad Penny and kind of this Eagles running back room as a whole, for me, I could see where Brandon's going with the drafting DeAndre Swift. I mean, that late in the draft, who the hell knows what's actually going to be on the board anymore. But with Rashad Penny specifically, like you're saying, he could be one of those guys where they used to just help milk clock. He's one of those guys where it's really dependent on what this defense actually ends up looking like, because he's the kind of guy where maybe after like week 2 or 3, he could be like a trade target for me, because you could probably get him for not a whole lot. Like if this defense is looking good and it starts to look like they're the kind of team that could do what they did last year, where they don't need to throw the ball late in the game, they could just pound it out. Rashad Penny could be a good target there. I mean, does that make sense rationally, or is that something that you would still try to stay away from?
It makes sense, but I am in a 12-man league, the leagues that matter out of the 5 that I'm going to be in this year. Is 2 of them. It's not a flex. I'm a psychopath. So if he's there at the very end, we're talking last round, that very last pick, where it's like, it's kind of like a whatever pick at that point, if Rashad Penny happens to still be there, which most likely he won't be in a 12-man league. But if he is, just for the sake of like, hey, I do have an Eagle on the team, you know what I'm saying, I might snatch him there just for the sake of that. But other than that, I'm not drafting any of these running backs and expecting them to help carry my team.
I mean, it's just so hard. I feel like you're more so targeting Penny in a standard league. I don't know in PPR what value he's bringing, because I feel like there's so many better flyer options to take a shot on than a guy like Rashad Penny.
He's the guy that has I don't know if it's the biggest, but it's pretty big. PPR, his ADP is 128, standard is 99. So I didn't mention that. That is a good thing. And then Kenny Gainwell, because again, he's one of those guys that has a big difference too. Kenny Gainwell is 183 in PPR, 154 in standard. If it comes down to the 16th round, Rashad Penny and Kenny Gainwell are both on the board. You're in a standard league. Which one are you guys picking?
Probably
I'm gonna go Gainwell.
We have more faith in Gainwell.
I'm with them, Gainwell.
Okay. Gotcha. And then just for fun, I did get Miles Sanders stuff here because I still consider him one of my guys. He is his ADP 48. Do you guys have faith in Miles Sanders, given that he has a rookie quarterback? They're going to be running the ball a lot. He's shown that he can do that, specifically that, and add not a whole lot to the passing game when we're talking PPR.
Miles Sanders is a prime candidate for being in for a rude awakening when he's no longer running behind the best offensive line in football. There's times, and last year I thought was his best year, obviously his best year. But in terms of seeing the whole, that's been one of my biggest gripes about him the previous couple of years, that though he kept showing potential, there was times where I felt like he wasn't reading the whole the correct way. And so if those holes are going to be less defined over there in Carolina, which I expect they will be, I think that there's a chance that he can end up disappointing some people who have high expectations.
I just think that Miles Sanders, while he might not have the same type of production in running the ball as he did with the Eagles in Carolina, I think it's going to be a focal point of that offense as a whole, because not too much talent there otherwise. This is a rebuilding team, rookie quarterback. I think Sanders is going to make up some of that production as a runner in the receiving game, because he never had the opportunity to show that in Philly, at least to a big extent. And I feel like that, Frank Reich is going to do a good job of scheming up things to where, maybe Sanders is able to contribute in a few more different aspects than he did in Philly.
You got anything on that, Trevor?
Agree with that. Oh. Yeah, I agree. I feel like Miles Sanders is a guy who's almost a little bit undervalued, kind of. I feel like people are used to seeing him in the Eagles where it's like, oh, they just think of the offensive line, but they don't really see that a lot of times he wasn't really playing too much in the second half of games and wasn't really like a focal point of the offense. You saw the Eagles a lot of times they'd switch him out with Gainwell or even Boston Scott in the second half of games last year. And with the Panthers, I think they're kind of expecting him to take a larger running back one role, and he seems to be all for it. And I wouldn't be surprised if I took him and found him in the flex spot if he was still available.
But here's the other problem with that, with Miles Sanders, and potential problem, because who knows. He also benefited from the danger of Jalen Hurts pulling the ball and running. That's another aspect. He also benefited from Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, being on the outside, making it difficult to bring, defenders up all the time. So, just the combination of the way the Eagles ran their offense with so many threats all over the place, including the quarterback, also behind that offensive line. I mean, I just think that they're not going to do Bryce Young like that. He's not going to be running the same type of offense that Hurts ran, and he's not the same type of threat that Hurts was this previous year. I mean, he's the MVP candidate. So, I mean, there's just more things that make me give it a side eye than things that I see to make me feel optimistic about him having some sort of breakout.
So it sounds like we're saying, so currently he's going in the fourth round at pick 48. Maybe one of those guys that if he's there in the fifth round, maybe late fifth round or something like that, that's when we'd grab him. Is that?
I'm fine with him in the fourth round, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Okay.
It
Okay.
depends on how the board falls. Because ideally,
Yeah.
I'd like to have two running backs that are better than him in
Yeah.
RB1 and 2. And then if it's 4th round, I'd maybe be looking to get that second receiver slot filled before I look for a guy in the flex. And then kind
Well,
of circling back to
I don't know
round
if I said
5, I'd
4th round, I
probably
meant
be
5th
looking to
round.
get Goddard.
I'm not drafting Miles Sanders in the 4th round. Nor the
He's going 5th round. I said that wrong.
I'm not drafting him there either. I'm not a believer right now. He has to start from scratch and show me again that he can do it over there in Carolina. I'm not. That pick is way too valuable to me to take, and the way I've described how I feel about his his potential this year, I'm not taking him in the 4th or the 5th round.
Gotcha. And then last 2 positions, if you want to call them that, Eagles defense is ranked 3rd. I'm personally, I stream defenses based on who they're playing that week, not a situation where I'm going to be drafting the Eagles defense, especially 3rd overall for defenses. And then Jake Elliott. With this, because I know there's 2 different rules of thought with kickers. You can play the hot hand if you get a good kicker who's keeps going. You get somebody like is McManus the guy in Denver still?
I think so.
Okay, well, whoever like a kicker is in Denver, or a team that's whoever Harrison Butker in Kansas City, a team that's going to have a lot of opportunities for those extra points. That's one thing to grab, or a Justin Tucker because he's automatic. There's that playing the hot hand like that, or again, streaming.
Brandon McManus is with the Jaguars now.
Is Brett Maher the guy in Denver then?
Yes.
Why? Why?
He's better from distance. They don't get too close to the goal line in Denver.
What a waste. What a waste. Why would you like a kicker that's going to be kicking half of the time in the thin air? You're going to get that clown? What a dumb. John Elway's an idiot.
He's not even in charge anymore.
Yeah, didn't he step down?
Yeah.
Oh, then whoever it is, that guy.
The Walmart family.
Oh, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. Okay, but my question: do you believe Jake Elliott to be a guy that is an automatic, the Justin Tucker type, Harrison Butker type guy, or is he a kind of guy that you would stream?
I stream all kickers besides Justin Tucker. That's just been my MO since recently. I don't trust any kickers, and unless the guy's getting me 10 plus points a week and is legitimately like swinging matchups in my favor, I don't care who it is.
Yeah, usually like every single league that I'm in, I found like after 4 or 5 weeks, the you can get a top 3 kicker, like an average in total points. They're usually there. It's usually for some reason a position like nobody pays attention to, and like I think it was Zane Gonzalez a couple of years ago was doing really well, and I picked him up. He was like the number 1 kicker in 21 or 22, and Jake Elliott's a guy I'd love to have him on the team. I feel like the Eagles kind of put him in a really good position to rack up a lot of points, and he's usually pretty accurate. But I'd rather have the Eagles defense than Jake Elliott, just because every turnover it just makes you that more excited for, and if they do get a touchdown, it's that much more excitement. But
that's fair.
I agree.
You can stream both of them, but it'd be nice if around 14, 15 you can land Jake Elliott, Eagles defense, and round out your roster.
Yep, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And that point about Justin Tucker too, Brennan, is spot on for me. I'm actually trying to get Justin Tucker before the end of the draft if I can, and I'll take him in like around 11 or 12 because he's Justin Tucker. This dude will put up like 15 points sometimes, 20 points even I've seen him do. He's a special guy. It's just like when we talk about that separation from the top tight ends to the rest, the top quarterbacks to the rest. Justin Tucker, compared to the other kickers, is night and day. And so if I can steal him early, because at that point we're picking bench guys anyway. Right. And in a 12-man league, like I said, that I'm in, it's already kind of slim pickings at skill positions. So if I can just slide Justin Tucker in there, I'm definitely doing that. I'm very high on him. If I can't get him, then I'm definitely aiming for Jake Elliott as my kicker. But swinging to what Travis said, I'd want the Eagles defense before I'm as focused on trying to get Jake Elliott.
Jake Elliott is one of those guys where I'd be fine getting him and then keeping him until the bye weeks start coming, because that's like the first guy that a lot of people will drop, and then I'll start picking people up there. So it's almost, I would draft him because just kind of automatic. But then once I get somebody else to come alive, I'll start streaming. But I feel like I kind of flip flip there come week 7 with kickers and stuff.
And that's the thing too. If I have Justin Tucker, I'm not dropping him on the bye week. You know,
but that's kind of my issue with your strategy, where it's like, yeah, you're just getting some bench guys, but it's also a guy that you can't drop. So it's kind of a weird thing, especially when you're giving value to a 12th round pick or something like that. That's kind of my thing. Okay. One last thing, and if you have an answer for this, give it. If you don't give it. Is there any other ex-Eagles that you're targeting in fantasy? I don't know if anybody has like a Mac Hollins take.
No.
Carson Wentz and Nick Foles.
No, but I do have another nugget I want to share. I have a beef that I want to share. It will be real quick once we're done with the fantasy. Are we done with the fantasy?
Yeah, I think we covered everything.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I was watching ESPN earlier. I love ESPN. It's very entertaining. No matter if I disagree with a lot of the opinions I hear or not, I watch it for the entertainment. Somebody I do actually like and respect is Dan Orlovsky, but he said earlier that he thinks that Brian Daboll is going to outcoach Nick Sirianni this year, and the disrespect that Nick Sirianni has been getting since he's been here is just it drives me nuts, and I'm just tired of it. I don't know what this guy has to do to prove that he's an upper echelon coach, but he's been impressing since he got there. That first year, we were projected to win 4 games. We made the playoffs. We did the same exact thing that Brian Daboll did that they gave him Coach of the Year for, sneaking into the playoffs with like a 9-7, overachieving, and they were projected to win more games than we were projected to in that previous year. And we keep beating the brakes off the Giants. I don't know why he would say that. I don't know why people think that Nick Sirianni isn't who he is, and he deserves more respect, and I'm here to give it to him.
Yeah, not only did he make it to the Super Bowl, I don't know what else. I agree. He told you. He said it. He said, I know what the F I'm doing. Like, you heard it from his mouth, man.
Yeah, they just don't like his interviews, and they really keep moving the goalposts on him. Like, it really was in 20 and 21. It was like, oh, we got to give it to the coach with the most wins, not who turned the team around the shortest amount of time and the best. And then last season it was, oh, we got to give it to Brian Daboll because he turned the team around. Forget that he lost to the same coach 3 times, and it was blatantly obvious Brian Daboll was outcoached in those games. His team was out schemed, and they were over from quarter 1.
Yeah, those were. I don't put a whole lot of faith into those end of the year awards, especially last year was just brutal. The Coach of the Year going to Daboll, the Comeback Player of the Year not being Brandon Graham, or Walter Payton Man of the Year not being Brandon Graham, whichever one you want to do. You should have won something. But yeah, very dumb.
Yeah, whenever the Eagles make the Super Bowl, they don't want to hand out any awards to them. But if another team does, they got to be all over them.
Right. Drives me nuts.
It's very.
And I just remember they were projected to win 6 games, and they won 9. So they won 3 more games than their projection, and we won 5 more the previous year. And he didn't get a nod at all that year. But
it's very dumb.
Brian Daboll, okay, and I like Daboll, but chill out. He's not better than Sirianni.
He's tall as he is wide. Chode. All right, that is what we got on this Monday. Thank you guys very much for joining us. Thank you for watching the Inside the Eagles live. We appreciate you guys. Hopefully you got some kind of tidbit of nugget or a tidbit of knowledge, a nugget of knowledge. I know we talked about a lot of things here. Maybe it reinforced some thoughts that you had, or maybe talked you out of some other thoughts that you had as far as fantasy drafts go, because that season is upon us. This weekend and next weekend probably are the two biggest weekends for fantasy drafts. So hopefully it came in the nick of time for you. Again, thank you very much for coming. Do you guys have anything else you want to say?
Nope.
Awesome. All right. That is Jalil Williams. That is his separated at birth brother who were conjoined. They didn't know it at the time, though. Travis Williams. That is Brandon Pockris. My name is Jake Beckman. Thank you for joining us. Go Birds.
Go Birds.